I'm just sending him a message.
Yeah.
Hey.
Good evening, Mr. Cromendam. Imtiaz, you'll have to unmute him, I think. He's there as Standard.
I think you need to unmute him.
Yes, yeah, just done. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening to you all. Pleased to meet you.
Pleased to meet you
works. Marjorie, do you want to share the latest deck online?
Yes.
Or want me to?
Yes, I can.
Oh, you want me to do it?
If you, yes, perhaps if you prefer to have the right flow for the beginning.
Okay, yes, let me do that. Because normally we don't do the.
But I can.
Do I share that here on this Zoom one? I share screen. It's easy, yeah.
Yeah.
That is screen. Share. Okay. Can you see this all well?
Yeah. Yes.
Great.
Wonderful.
Okay, very good. Do you want me to start? Do you want me to first
just hold
wait
on
a bit?
Yeah, just we have a minute to go.
Absolutely, no problem.
So, Ms. Morand, we have now 144 participants.
Wow.
So I told you we're a big country.
Yeah.
That's great. And these are all students in your in some of your classes, correct?
Yes. So mostly students. We also have some of our professors who are attending.
Great.
And so the Distinguished Speaker Series is now in season 2. And we have had speakers from all over the world who have come and spoken to our students. And so I welcome you to this speaker series, and we like to hear from France and the Netherlands.
Thank you.
That's great. Yes. Shall I start then?
So no, just 2 minutes, Mr. Croman.
Okay, no problem. So, yeah, you give me a signal when you.
So Rahul, all yours. We can start it.
Okay, thank you, Captain. Welcome. Very good evening to everyone. So the way we will go about this webinar will be pretty much similar to the earlier ones. That is, all of us, all participants will stay on mute. If you have questions while the speakers are going through their presentation, please put those questions, please type those questions in the chat window. And towards the end of the presentation, at the end of the presentation, I will ask those questions, relay those questions, and that's the same format as what we have been following so far. So welcome and have a good evening. Thank you.
So thank you, Rahul, and welcome to the Distinguished Speaker Series brought to you by Dayanand Sagar University, Bengaluru. Under the aegis of the Distinguished Speaker Series, we invite thought leaders from around the world to talk to our students, faculty, and citizens at large. I would like to welcome Mr. Standard Cromendam, Group HRD, CHRO Ecotone, and Ms. Marjorie Morand, Human Resources Europe, Compensation and Benefits, and Organization Design Manager at Ecotone. Standard Cromendam is Group HRD CHRO for all Ecotone, formerly named West Nennen. Operations since January 2017. A company with operations across Europe with the main aim to provide organic food to consumers, and by doing so providing consumers better food choices. Prior to West Nennen, Standard worked for Ahold as Vice President HR, Commerce, Unilever, and NCR. Standard currently lives with his wife and 2 kids in Lyon, France. Welcome to the Distinguished Speaker Series, Mr. Cromendam. Marjorie Morand is an
Thank you.
HR professional with over 20 years of working experience for international companies specialized in petroleum, chemicals, IT, and since 3 years in the food for biodiversity. Ms. Morand has a background of HR generalist manager, and her main HR expertise are compensation and benefits, human resource information systems, and organizational design. She is currently the European Compensation and Benefits Manager for Ecotone and develops reward strategies and policies to attract and retain talent. The topic for today's discussion is how HR strategy contributes to business performance. And I would now hand over to our two speakers for the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm pleased to be here, and I'm always very excited to just share the great things we can do in human resources with anyone who's interested. So really pleased to be here with all the participants from India. I have to say that's the first time with a direct link to India in this kind of format. So I'm very honored and very pleased to spend a bit of time with you, especially since I know it's a evening program for all of you. So that makes it even more special. We're going to talk a little bit about HR. We just talked about the two speakers. Marjorie Morand will talk a little bit later about organization design, but I will first set a little bit of the scene. On the agenda for today, a couple of words about Ecotone. Then we dive into the HR strategy, how digital transformation is really the enabler of many things that you do within business, both in business as well as in HR, that it's very important to have the right organization first if you want to deliver any type of business strategy. Then how you grow people and capability to keep at pace with competition externally, and how you keep everything balanced by having a really good eye on your culture and how you grow the energy. And then we have a conclusion, and as was just said already, I'm also very much more than pleased to take any questions or discussion points, so we'll definitely leave a little bit of time open at the end to do that. A few words about Ecotone, and formerly named Westzaan was already said in the introduction. Westzaan is actually a very old Dutch company, founded in the Netherlands in 1765, so more than 250 years old. It's one of the oldest companies in the Netherlands. Back in the days, a very different company. It has changed a lot throughout those 250 years. In the last 30 years or so, the company has already moved its focus on organic food, food that is produced without any harm basically to the climate as much as possible, without the use of pesticides, etc. So really healthy food for our consumers. That has been really a niche segment in let's say the food segment overall within Europe, but across the globe, if you compare to what we would call conventional food, which is more aimed at the mass market. But more recently, in the last 2, 3, 4 years, has really exploded in the market also within Europe. So within the total food market in Europe, organic food only plays about 5%, but over the last recent years has really exploded. Many more private label, so that's own label from grocery retailers, as well as conventional food players, so the large multinationals, have really invested in development of products with an organic source, and or have acquired companies in that direction. For Westzaan, which is formerly named Westzaan, they actually were on the stock exchange as well for a long time in the Netherlands, were acquired last year by private equity consortium. And more recently, we have now transformed our name into Ecotone as a, let's say, group corporate name, which is still built on the old history. So all the rest stays the same. All the foundation of Westzaan stays the same. But Ecotone is our, let's say, our new group corporate name, because it better explains what we're trying to do is really to create biodiversity again. As we have seen over the past years, past decades basically, that biodiversity has been reduced across the board by more than 60% globally because of many different reasons that we will not go into today. But definitely that's part of our ambition now, to restore that by a better usage of raw materials, so to not overutilize the most commonly used raw materials. So we will do that differently in terms of our sourcing. We also want to move our organic footprint in our product portfolio from the current 80% to 90%, and also 95% of our current product portfolio is meat-free or vegetarian. Yeah, and that all helps and contributes, of course, in the improvement of biodiversity and climate overall. Ecotone, therefore, is a very nice name to bring that together, because basically Ecotone, if you look it up on the internet, it will show you that ecotone is basically a place where two different ecosystems come together at the place, and they live basically next to each other, and they actually help each other to improve the life and biodiversity overall. That's probably a very nice topic for a very different webinar over time. Today we're going to talk about HR, but definitely there's a lot to tell also about CSR. And there's also a lot of expertise in our company to tell a bit more about that as and when you would be interested in that. Now, who are we actually? So we're basically a multinational company, but I would say a smaller size multinational company. As was said in the introduction, I worked at the very large corporates, Ahold, which is a large retail company with over 200,000 employees globally. Unilever, of course, also, which you know probably quite well. That's a very big name also in India. So very big, large global company, fantastic companies and brands. We have a similar DNA. We're multinational. We work across Europe, and we also do export to another 90 countries across the globe. But we do that with 1,600 people. Yeah, with main offices in these 6 countries in Western Europe, where we also have another 9 factories. So approximately half of our product portfolio is produced out of these factories by ourselves, and the other half we work with partners, third-party producers, basically. So this gives you a bit of a flavor. These are some of our brands. So you see that we basically work across 6 key categories. Dairy alternatives, sweet in between, bread replacers, breakfast cereals, hot drinks, and veggie meals. So in those 6 categories, we have product offering, and we do that basically through a lot of local brands. So we operate very close to the market, because in food specifically, consumers really want, let's say, local products with local flavors, and of course, brand names that they recognize. But the comparison that all these products have is that they're organic, for the vast majority of it, and that they operate in those 6 key categories, and of course the synergies we find on the back end. So these are very many of our, let's say, successful brands in some of the different countries. Yes?
We don't see the slide with the brands, just technical point of view. We are still on the Ecotone.
Oh, you don't see it?
No. Same.
You're still there?
Students.
Let me try that again. Just checking, because it
doesn't move.
Good that you mention it. Can you see it now?
No.
Okay. Would you mind sharing your screen then, just to make sure people can see it?
Yes, I can. I can share my screen. Of course.
Apologies for that. We can quickly show the slides again.
Yes. Let me try up. So we'll try to share my screen up. There we go.
What's happening? Yes.
So I will try with the presentation mode.
Yeah.
Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes.
So the can you
see it? Yeah, we can see it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this again, was the picture on the number of people, and this is some of our brands, as said, across these 6 key categories. Where Clipper Tea is probably our most international brand that you find all across the globe. Also, Bjork is quite famous. And then we have a number of very strong, also local brands on different products. So that gives you a bit of flavor. When we looked at that HR strategy, just one point of attention, that HR strategy always follows a business strategy, which is the topic of today's discussion. We couldn't, of course, share our business strategy in full detail because it's quite a competitive environment. So you may understand that I cannot share exactly all that we do. But we have a strategy that is, on the one hand, is focused on growth, on the growth of our big brands, and also to accelerate some areas of our business. On the other hand, of course, we're also focusing getting more efficiencies and synergies, for example, in our supply chain, in how we source our raw materials, so basically be cost efficient. Also on our organization. So how do you shape your organization? We'll come back to that in a moment, such that you can continue to invest in key capabilities that you need for the future. And key talent that you want to retain, but at the same time, you cannot just keep on adding costs without doing anything about your existing cost base. Yeah. So those were some of the parts that are part of our business strategy, as well as our CSR strategy that I just talked about, as well as acquisition. Yeah. We will not share that slide once again, just for competitive and sensitive reasons. But what I will share is what you see now, which is the HR strategy, which is set within that business strategy. So my HR strategy with the total European team is focused around 3 build: grow people, grow business, grow energy. Those are the 3 building blocks I ask each business leader always to remember. And that is super important, but can only be important if we first get the basics right. And what is the basics is the digital transformation. So we're going to have a look at that now. Yeah, that's on the next slide. You can move to the next slide, Marjorie, if you want. One more. So when I arrived in 2017, we had one leading system within HR, which we call SuccessFactors. There's a few other global systems around there, and you can forget about the names of those systems, especially if you're not in HR. But what is important to say about it is that the systems and the data that you can put into the system and the data hierarchy basically helps you to accelerate the business even, because you get much better visibility, of course, about the number of people that you employ, the cost that those people bring, some of the skills people may have or some of the skills that you're missing, succession planning, which is key for your critical jobs. All of that can be stored in one single system, but then of course you need to ensure you have your data hierarchy right, and also you have all those different modules connected. So what you see here is a bit of a busy overview, but it's basically the different modules of SuccessFactors and how we have started to connect each one of them to build a foundation on which we could accelerate our HR agenda, which then helped, of course, to stimulate the business agenda. Yeah. So we started with the job classification and the hay mapping, which is very well-renowned methodology within HR, where you look at how do I structure my organization, what kind of job families, job groups do I have, and as a consequence, once you have that right, you can connect your remuneration policies to it. So Marjorie will talk about it in a moment. You can also start to look at your data structures that you attach to it, your succession planning, and also what people should be learning. Now here you see a couple of visuals. I always like to share a couple of visuals because it brings it to life. So this is actually an overview of such a system, which an employee or a manager will actually have to their direct access. So this is what they will see when they log in. So they can see the organizational charts with all of their teams, the data structures, the hay mapping done. Where do my people sit in which group, basically? What kind of skills do they need to learn? And that's linked then to the learning platform, which we'll also look at. This is a visual on the Employee Central, as we call it. So this is where all this data is stored that you need to build basically up your system. And if we move then to the next slide. That leads then, as I said, to some steering information, which is super critical to have, because HR is, yes, it's all around making sure people are basically happy in what they do and are well equipped. in what they can do, but it's also a lot about numbers and data, which is sometimes perhaps forgotten. But we can tell every single day of the week how many people do we have employed, not only permanently on the payroll, but also third-party or agency workers, and mainly also in the factories. How many people do we have employed? How much of that is male, female? For diversity, that's important. How many per job family? But also, what are the costs of this? Which again is a key driver if you look at the full P&L of any business. Yeah? Of course, it's about the top line, but it's certainly also about the bottom line. Now, what we then started to do as well is to build a little bit of our employer branding and our recruitment efforts to make sure that people can actually apply for jobs directly, and we basically feed them through the system. So as soon as they're selected, they are also onboarded online, and we link all of the information directly into digital files and a digital environment, which then again also links the new employee also to the learning module. So again, it's a fully holistic virtual ecosystem is what you would call, yeah. Here you see a couple of slides or views on the onboarding system. Again, quite helpful to see. And some of the other things that we do then in the system in terms of position management, which then leads also into your succession planning overview. Yeah, which I said, which is critical for any healthy business to have, is to have proper succession planning, so that if someone leaves, that you know exactly, okay, who could take up that position as of tomorrow and who is ready. So you also see some readiness status here, which is of course dummy versions. You see a lot of football players, which some of you may find interesting, but that's just to give a flavor. Then also very important is that you drive, let's say, a pay for performance culture to ensure people have clear targets in the system. At the start of the year, they have frequent check-ins. So not all the way at the end of the year, but throughout the year, to really give proper and transparent feedback, and obviously also to pay for that performance. So besides the salary, base salary payment, also to be able to pay some variable payments if you do well and you achieve the targets. Again, this is all fully managed in this virtual world, basically. And then, of course, once you've set your goals, there's also developmental areas that people want to work on. We put that in an individual development plan, and that links then to a fully online learning system, which we call Learning Comes Naturally, where people can take ebooks, they can take e-learnings. Also, classroom-based trainings are registered there. We have lots of different input from many different sources. And we also create our own content, for example, on what things that we find important. E-commerce channel is, for example, booming, which is already, of course, very big also in India, but also in Europe that has really accelerated, and they want to be able to educate people on what are really the key performance drivers when it comes to e-commerce. And this is a quick view on what we do online when we close out the year in regards to performance. As I mentioned, and you also want to be able to pay people appropriately in terms of base pay, but also in terms of variable pay. And that's all tracked also again through the system with dedicated budgets per team. And then finally, to wrap up on the point on the digital first as an enabler to a HR strategy, we now also will move to one overall payroll system, such that instead of 6, 7 different ones, we have one integrated payroll solution, such that you can see live again 24/7 the actual payroll cost, actual number of people on the payroll on any given month in the year, which again is super efficient and helpful when you look at the, let's say, how do you drive a business and how do you drive a business strategy. We want to be able to influence the bottom line of business performance. You can only do that if you have the right steering information, the right data on board.
Okay. Up.
Thank you. So then before I hand over the word to Marjorie, just a quick word on this. So when you go back to the HR strategy map as such in your memory, we said, okay, we have a bottom line which is set, fix the basics first. So that's what we started to do in 2017 when we looked at, okay, this system, how do you build this holistic digital first approach first? Which then gives you all these insights and information. Now, once you have that, then you can actually start to help driving the business agenda. And as I mentioned, in the business agenda, all of our efforts are aimed at growth. We need to do, as a consequence of that, of course, quite some investments. When you look at, of course, marketing spend, new resources that need to come on board, etc., etc. But you cannot do that all on top of an existing cost base. You still need to protect your profit and manage the bottom line. And so that's where we started to look at how can we help to grow the business. Now, based on these headcount reports that we have, these costs for purpose, and that's where Margarina can take you through a couple of the things that we've done.
Yes, thank you, Standard. So on Grow Business, I want to talk with you about organization design. First of all, organization design is an HR holistic approach. When you look at your organization and when you need to support your business to grow and to meet its expectation, its goals, you always need to keep in mind 5 questions. First of all, do you have the right talents in your organization? Then, do you have the organization that is fit for the purpose of the company, that is fit for the ambition of the company? On reward, do you also have the reward tools to attract and retain top talents? On skills, do you have the required skills? Really, really important to allow your teams to develop themselves and to perform. And all of that with the background of the culture of the company, which is super important also to just keep in mind that the values of your company and the way you communicate on is really the, I would say, the nutshell of all of that. So, org design for us is also a question of balancing what we can call the yin and the yang of org design. Why do we say that? As we mentioned, you know, as a HR, we can be perceived as really creative, etc. But first of all, we don't invent the money. We need to find, on one hand, the money, the savings that you can make in your organization, to reinvest it, on the other hand, on keep capabilities and the needs that are important to grow your business and to support the business strategy. About methodology now. What is really org design? What do we do when we start to deploy a global org design in the company approach? We will take into consideration 3 drivers that I will develop just after. The first one, you need to count your head count. So easy to say, but then what is important to start the reflection is to compare the situation of your company to a benchmark of external companies that you can buy to different providers. And then what is important is to have a benchmark of companies that are in link and comparable to yours in terms of size of business, of complexity, of activity. What we advise is to start the reflection with the management team on that base. Then you can just compare where you are and decide if you want to meet the median of the benchmark, or sometimes a more aggressive approach if you put yourself on the Q1 target, or a less aggressive approach if you want to put yourself on the Q3 target. But you can't take just the absolute numbers with the benchmark as the target of your company. Because what is really super important to do to have the global assessment of your organization is to conduct in parallel an assessment of the empowerment of your organization and agility. And how can you assess that? You can do that with two drivers, two KPI. The first one is to count the layer in your company. What is a layer? A layer is a level of management, level of the team. You start with the layer 1 with the CEO, and then you conduct in your company the analysis of all the layers to go to the lowest layer in the company. When you buy the benchmark around FTEs and for org design purpose, you can also have recommendation regarding your company of what can be the right number of layers to keep the empowerment and agility of the company. So in this case, the example that we take, we have the console that the number of layers, what can be a good driver, is 5 layers. And when you assess all your company, you can see in which department, in which team, you can go to more than 5 layers. And then you start to analyze if it's the correct organization. The second topic is the span of control. The span of control is the size of the team, sorry. So just to count the number of FTEs in the team, and then you compare and you take an average of that, and you can see where are the big gaps. Once you have done that, the comparison with FTEs, layers, and span of control, you can start all the discussion with the managers to progressively build what we call the target operating model. I will go through the animation, sorry. The target operating model is, okay, once we say that, what is the best organization to meet our purpose, our expectation? And you start to write the principle of each one. So here I give you an example for a finance department. You can say, okay, so we want to have X amount of people in treasury, in controlling, etc., because they will serve the activity. And once you do that, you can then compare the current situation to the target one. And you will find the savings with this methodology to reinvest on new capabilities that are not existing in your company, but are needs for the development of your business. I hope that give you a small perspective on what is org design. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask them for the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, so we just talked about digital first as the enabler. And now Marjorie had spoken about what can you then do with all of the data and with some additional supportive benchmarks to get some insights on how you should organize yourself from an org design perspective. Under the grow business pillar, as we go back to the HR strategy. But then, of course, it's also very important once you've established what is the ideal or the target operating model, as we would call it, it's also very important to ensure that you do a proper assessment on the people in those jobs, because often your organization will transform a little bit, and you need to understand where there may be potentially gaps when it comes to skills. For example, and beyond skills, do I have the right talent, also with the right leadership behaviors on board, and what are the kind of trainings that I need, and how do I really cement that all in a performance management process, where I can also reward people for the good work that they do. So we started then to really develop what we call functional skills per job family. So job family is, for example, marketing. And then we worked with the senior leaders in marketing and said, okay, what are the 3 critical skills, again, that really will make the boat go faster? That's the synonym that we always use in terms of driving the business strategy. So this 3 functional skills can be very different from one company to another. This is a fit for purpose for our company in the context of our business strategy, basically. Based on those, I will not go through each of those different job families. We then started to develop learning comes naturally and fully deploy that online, both on the laptop as well as on mobile, so people can on the go have access to almost 12,000 titles of learning now, of which 100 titles are developed by ourselves, so homemade programs, and that leads to an average of 3 titles done per person, only for this year alone, but of course there's some variances between that. Aside from the more general skills, we also have very specific academies that we develop. So Sales Academy, which is only focused on dedicated functional skills within sales, in this case, so sales negotiation is a good example, or brand innovation under marketing. And so that's for a very dedicated group. We select then some trainings that are fit for purpose for that specific group. Very clear, yes. So if we then move on to the next slide. The other part, of course, is then, of course, once you have the right people on the right jobs, with the right skills, you also need to make sure that you pay for performance. Super important. So we are a purpose-driven company, but we also believe in basically a vision of performance meets purpose. And so we also still need to pay people appropriately in line with the market and also pay them for the performance that they bring. So we look at the Hay methodology, as we said, that's the foundation of everything. Based on that, you can rank certain jobs, and attached to that, you can benchmark them against the external market in terms of salary ranges. But then also we, of course, bring variable pay into consideration just on the next slide, where we basically say, okay, based on the grade where they are, we give a perspective of what is the variable pay that they should be entitled to. That's of course also in line with the responsibility of that job. So the higher the grade is, the bigger the job is, the more responsibility and P&L accountability you have. So again, there's a direct link there with your remuneration policies and strategies to the business strategy that you have. And then finally, I think it's also very important, we just talked about grow pillar and grow people as a second pillar. The grow energy, when we talked about culture and the values, is super important in all of this transformation. When you do this work on organization design, upskilling people, etc., that's quite a volatile period where you also want to keep up the momentum and keep up the positive energy that you have, and really also do that in the right context and the right language. Yeah, so we're going to have a look at a little bit, how do you grow the energy, or how do you maintain the energy within your workforce, which is much more invisible, it's much more sometimes difficult to measure, but one of the most important parts of getting a business right. Yeah, you can have fantastic plans in terms of business plans, but if people are not motivated, if they're not energized to deliver for you and go the extra mile, it will be very difficult to beat the competition externally and meet your business strategy. So first of all, on the next slide, we have basically put together what makes us unique and what is something that unites us. And we felt very strongly across all of our operating companies that these 4 values, which make up the word of care, are really the driving force behind our culture: cooperation, agility, responsibility, and entrepreneurship. On these care values, these are fully integrated now also in our talent attraction methodologies. So when we hire new people, we actually test on it. In our performance cycle, so we look at it with people through mid-year and year-end review, whether or not in the projects they did not only deliver the content side of things, but also how they deliver the content. So super important. And we also have various leadership sessions running now on leading with care. So how do you lead high performance under stress, of course, to some extent, but still with care. It's super important. And some of the ways we do that, also through the leadership team, which I'm part of, is through basically simple and regular communication. You see a couple of examples here, involving our colleagues across Europe in our brands, in new innovations, etc. A lot of our colleagues, rightfully so, are very proud of our brands. We also ask them to join on some of the competitions. So Take Your Brands on Holiday is one of the pictures that you see here, where our brands travel all around the world. Quite fun. We have an internal shop where people can get access to our products, and also lots of the in-store activation, which you see on the right-hand side. Here's some stores in France, is shared on social media. So there's different events which bring out this engagement. On the next slide, we see also some more examples of how we create a unique place where we can work, but where we can also live our mission. I think we all recognize, whether or not you're in university or whether or not you're at work, you spend a lot of time in one given place. If you go back just to one slide, Marjorie. So it's very important that you build kind of some common things together. So you see here examples of our store, do physical activities together, because we're all about healthy people, healthy food. So we offer trainings at our workplace. We have our own garden where people can join in to do some work. And we also have some kids education. Also as a team, on the next slide, we have some examples of our teams in Italy who actually plogging, which basically means they're walking around and picking up a lot of garbage, and they do that all together as a team. That's an activity that basically comes across many of our opcos. This is very much part of our DNA, to contribute also to society and much beyond your own job on a day-to-day basis. Finally, we find it also important to be there for for students to reaching out to the future leaders of this world. That starts already at a very early age, where we help to educate on what is healthy food, what are some of the healthy breakfast habits, where we can do that. This was particularly a competition for schools in Italy, where people could, or kids could basically put together some zero waste and healthy food projects, and then we selected the winner. Very nice. And on the next slide, we also see that we offer a lot of activities. So students from technology schools can join us for some factory tours, where they can see how factories or how that's being run, and perhaps it's of their interest. Learn about organic and taste our products. So these are all kind of things that come back on an annual basis. And of course, on the final slide, also in these times of COVID, we all have to deal with it. Of course, unfortunately, we also try to contribute in the direct society. So we have product donation across Europe in many different countries to both hospitals, home for the elderly, and some other basically social welfare organizations. Yeah, and we find it very important to also contribute in that space. So it's very important to keep an eye on this, and to internally as well to communicate a lot about these events where people can participate in themselves. So they also feel that it's not so much a job. If you work at our company, if you work at Ecotone, you really join an experience, and you join basically a community that fights for biodiversity and better food offering. In conclusion, what you have just seen on the next slide, just a few bullet points as a conclusion, is our HR strategy. And the HR strategy started with a digital first approach. You first need to get your data sets in order to generate insights of the DNA of your company. How many people do you have? Where do they sit? In which job groups? Which job families? What are the cost of that, etc.? What are your skill gaps? Then you can start, once you have that in place, then you can start to grow people. Very important, but you can't do that before you grow your business, of course. If you grow your business, you have funds later to invest in people. But on the grow business, we also just explained that you first need to get your organization right. So do you have the right people on board? Do you have the right skill set on board? Do you have the right roles on board? Yeah. So from grow business, you move into grow people, you invest in training of the skills, and then finally you move into growing energy, where you make sure that everyone is super engaged around the purpose of your company and very clear on how they can contribute to business success. Now, if you put it all together, I hope you could clearly see that HR plays indeed a central role in any business strategy. If you want to make a business strategy work, it starts with people. It's very simple, yeah? It should also be an integrated strategy that looks at all the aspects of the workforce in order to get to an effective strategy. But as I mentioned, starting with the foundation is important. Balancing between organization, design, change management, and investment all at the same time, because it often happens all in parallel, is often very much a balancing act. Yeah, so that's something to keep an eye on. So you need to be at the same time quite sensitive to the dominant cultural elements in order for any of these changes to be successful. Often for a lot of people, there's also a bit of uncertain times sometimes with all this transformation. That change is more constant in these kind of VUCA world, as we would call it. Yeah. So therefore, HR could really be seen as a change agent in the organization and play therefore a really central and critical role in any business and as part of any business strategy. And that's also one of the reasons why, for me, probably also for Marjorie, it's super exciting to be part of HR because we're really driving forces of this business. So perhaps the final statement is a nice one to open up for questions. For whom of you would this be interesting? Because then definitely HR is perhaps a nice new job to select. So thank you for your attention for now, and I'm very much looking forward to any questions or discussion points. Back to the moderator, please.
Thank you, both of you, Ms. Morand and Standard. So, Dr. Dige?
Yeah, I think we have a couple of interesting questions. Maybe before we take those, I have I have a couple of curiosities. If you could explain what your views are on those. So when we talk about, you mentioned digital first. So there was an era where companies embraced, implemented ERP systems. A lot of data is captured in those, and processes were, of course, embedded in the systems. In a world where business models are changing quickly, very rapidly, do you find that the digitization, staying digital, is a challenge? I can explain what I mean a little bit more, maybe, in the sense that if you have legacy systems, and even if you try to change to new systems that support new ways of doing business, do you find that there are adequate IT systems available from an HR perspective, to support the way you want to support the company?
Yeah. No, I think yes. I think the leading systems that we have, SAP type of systems, etc., are definitely very comprehensive, also quite agile, and are continuously updating. Of course, they're clever enough, these developers, to continuously update all these different systems, also to make them fit for purpose for the future. And what you can see, generally speaking, also now, I think COVID is a good example, is that those companies that are not fully reliant only on, let's say, physical assets, of course, have more opportunity in some ways, and that's very unfortunate, but that's of course the reality. So if you also have channels online through which you can products or any other type of service, it actually helps you to survive in this COVID crisis, where a lot of physical stores and things have either closed, or at least the number of visitors have reduced. So you need to find quickly other ways to offer your product. And that's also true for HR. I think the data has helped us, again, to generate insights that otherwise you wouldn't have. And I'm sure that in the near future, other insights are required again. For that, by that time, there will be digital solutions again to make your life easier. So it's more a facilitator. It's not the end solution, but it's definitely a key facilitator to your solutions.
Okay, and the second question I have, maybe it is more appropriate for Ms. Moran, is about appraisal systems and benefits. So I do know that over the last, I do know from more than just a couple of large corporations, I won't name them. I was with one of them, and they did away with some systems, appraisal systems, that and actually admitted to everyone that we have for many years been doing perhaps things not the right way. For example, using a bell curve, or using sort of a distribution for doing appraisals, and maybe a very well-known software company whose software all of us use also admitted that we have been getting it wrong. And they said that we need to do away with this, and we are going to just simplify the process. The whole process of normalization, aggregation of grades and everything upwards in the whole organization pyramid, they did away with that. So have you seen anything like that, or what are your views on sort of the normalization based, maybe if you can call them classic or legacy appraisal systems? I don't mean digital systems, I mean the processes.
Well, once again,
I understand your point. Marjorie, you want to answer that?
Yes, or you can introduce. I have something in mind, but it's up to you.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, it's up to you. About systems on compensation and benefits, once again, to keep our agility, I always try to simplify and to be pragmatic. Of course, we can use different specialized systems in compensation and benefits, but the way we work at Ecotone is to use the maximum of our success factor, the full HRIS system with SAP, the full SAP system and to develop each module of the same system, because in this system we have a compensation and benefits module that help us to calculate the variables, the salaries, to manage the salary review each year. On this part, I would say managing the data in our company. And we use only one external system that is provided by Camferry, I guess, a Camferry to compare with the external market. So we're just pragmatic. We use what we have, we deploy it, we keep it completely integrated to offer to an experience to our employees in the same system. He can have his variable, his increase, his salary, his balance of leave, etc. So we keep really pragmatic with one system, and only by some benchmark and some comparison with some other system.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think the other point that was also raised, Marjorie, that's very clear. The other point that was also raised was around the methodology of ratings as such. I know that's a very low discussion. The likes of Adobe, that was referred to, as some other large companies have said, well, we don't no longer do ratings for performance. That's very correct. That's very much an opinion, of course, in the end. It's not science, yeah. But we also look at some of these things. We also look at the fact what is fit for purpose for us. Within our business, there was a desire to have some level of structure to be able to assess performance throughout the year and to reward people for that. But we definitely moved from what we call performance management to performance development, which is much more aimed at how do I help this person to achieve his or her goals, to much more developmental focus. And we've done a lot of coaching sessions with all the managers on how can you do that, and changing that paradigm and that conversation structurally, yeah. And then we'll see over time how we evolve it further. So that's definitely a topic of interest, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. So I will now move on to the questions from participants from the audience. So one question is, how can the HR strategy in the organization combine with, say, with the traditional HR rules and prospects? So how to make it stand out for the new generation? What difference can HR strategy can do?
Well, it's quite a broad question.
Yeah.
So I'll try to answer it, and then please let me know if it doesn't answer the question. What this is being referred to is indeed to always have a basic foundation of the, let's say, the regular rules. So what's my number of leave hours, and what are some of the leave opportunities, or what are some of the processes? That's the old style, still relevant to some extent, HR work, yeah, because people have certain needs, base needs, if and when they go to work. I think indeed what you recognize is also on those base elements on leave and benefits, for example, we're looking continuously at what is relevant for the future. And that also refers to the second part of the question, is which generations do we actually have working in our workforce, and what do they need? So we do, for example, some different workshops with those different generations to understand what they prefer the most. Do you rather have X amount of holidays, or do you rather have just money, or do you rather have an undefined number of hours and you define how you want to plan your holidays? And that very much depends from one generation to another. And that is actually also a transformation on the benefit side that we're currently working on. That's a nice probably example of where you move from the more traditional offering that all the companies have into something more modern that's more custom to different generations. A very relevant topic. And that also moves into strategy, because ultimately that will determine whether or not people are happy with, in this case, for example, the benefits that you offer, and whether or not they will stay with you, which is critical for you because you want to retain critical knowledge and skill in your organization.
Right. Thanks very much. So one other question is about digitization related to sort of going digital. So of course the presence of HR in any function of the organization, access for people to have access to HR partners or HR personnel is important. I mean, we are all human, and we like that interface. So the question, one of the questions here is, is it going sort of maybe too far in terms of making a lot of digitization, and with, of course, every company having pressures of not having more than required staff, and I'm sure that applies to HR as well. So is that something that do you see that trend happening? I mean, if I were to personally share something, I do feel that question is a valid one, because I used to have many times people in my organization ask me, why is there no HR partner on our floor? So what is sort of your take on that?
I fully understand that. Yes, I also see that movement, especially with large corporations that used to have many HR partners on the ground, then put in a lot of effort in digitalization and then take out the HR business partner or the HR partner. In the end, it's still always a choice, a business choice. So we believe at Ecotone that is not the case. So it can actually go in hand in hand. We use the digitalization for benefit to generate better insights, and with that to support the business strategy better. But I still have the same amount of people on the ground in HR, because we're very much also a humans-oriented business, and that means that people really value indeed these interactions with a person, real life, to indeed have conversations around a wide range of activities. So for us, that has not been the driver to reduce workforce in HR. Absolutely not. But more globally, I've seen some larger corporations that have indeed gone into that direction. It's a personal choice or a business choice in the end.
Okay. Okay. I think, Captain, you have a question, right? Would you like to ask that question now?
Yeah. So my questions are a little general, and the first question is to Ms. Moran. So when you construct a compensation package, is it a one size fit everybody kind of a package, or you delve into what somebody is looking for and come up with what is called as an employee value proposition? That is, you can tailor your compensation package differently for different people as they come into your organization, or do you standardize it?
I would say both. Both. Let's talk first about compensation, and we'll discuss about benefits. Compensation is more the direct, the salary, variable, etc., and benefits more the indirect compensation. On compensation, we would like to standardize some practices across the countries, but we don't offer exactly the same tools to every kind of population in the countries. For example, I give you an example. What will make some more, I would say, performance in the factories or in the salespeople are not absolutely not the same drivers. You can't engage the same with the same things regarding the different population that you address. And another comparison is, for example, for the executive employees of the company, for the top management, if you want to attract them and to be competitive with the external, you need to put in some kinds of tools that you won't offer to everyone. But what is very important is to be really fair to everyone and to have the median, to offer something that is more in line with the median benchmark. And when you have some population, some groups, then you can standardize in the groups. That's on the compensation part. And on the benefits part, that's more work in progress, as Standard mentioned previously. We are now trying, we are families of companies first, but we are in the same group, and we have the same values, and we share the same objective. So progressively, we start to study what can we offer as a common circle for everyone. But we need to, as fairly mentioned previously, manage with some legal compliance that we are obliged to follow. And we are progressively starting to study what are the different needs of situation, personal situation, or generations, and where do we want to put our offer. And perhaps, because we didn't finalize our recommendation, how can we introduce a kind of flexibility in the offer we will do? But it's more, I would say, on the benefits part, and on the compensation, it's really, really driven with the type of group that you are managing. If you are on factories, it will be more things linked to the volumes, to the tons, etc. If you are for sales representative, it's not exactly the same way to engage them. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. So employee value proposition is important. And today you may have people who say money is not important, give me more flexibility, or give me more benefits and things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Standard, the questions for you. There's this very famous Canadian academic called Henry Mintzberg, and he said that stop calling your employees as resources. It sounds ugly. Call them as human beings. What is your thought? Should we be moving in that direction?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think you make a very fair point there. I think human resources is something that it came up many years ago, and I think it's, of course, human resource doesn't only talk about people, but it talks more about everything that you need to give to people to be able to do their job, and they feel happy and they feel good and they deliver productivity. So that's actually what human resource is referring to. I think that the thought on that is indeed that humans are humans, and I think that's very important to recognize. All the other elements are human resources. You see also more and more job titles now these days about chief people officers, etc. But I also not taken a decision on that yet, because I don't particularly like that job title either, because it would say that you're the chief of people, which is also not the case. People are very autonomous by themselves, and you can never be the boss of anyone else, to be honest. Yeah. So I think that's we're probably still in a struggle in the HR workforce to find the right job titles for ourselves. Yeah.
Fantastic. Dr. Dige, back to you if there are any more questions.
Yes, actually, I have one last question, and maybe again it is more related to benefits based on performance. What is your view, and if you are at liberty to share, maybe what is the view of your company in terms of whether you stretch the benefits for performance as much as possible disproportionately, or you try to sort of reward more to the median? What do you think is a better strategy? I mean, recently, off late, I have heard companies say that we will load the top performers very, very heavily in terms of benefits and bonuses, and we will simply just pay out a salary to the rest of the people. So it's a very top-heavy payout model, whereas maybe more traditional models have a little more uniform distribution of bonuses and annual benefits, right? So what's your sort of personal view on it?
Well, Standard, do you want to answer?
Marjorie,
I
go
can.
ahead. No,
Yes.
go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I would say, as we mentioned, performance is really, really important, and we want to pay for performance, and we communicate on that part. But first of all, we are a mission company, a company based really on a mission and on a purpose. And I would say that our remuneration policy is based first on equity and on, I would say, the way that we put for performance is important in our global balance, but we continue to pay really more than the half of the total package on the practices that are in line with the external benchmark in each country also, and that are in line with our mission, with our purpose, with fairness that we want to address all across company. But of course, part of that is based on needs to pay for performance. And at one moment, you mentioned how can we do differently for the top performers, for example. We recently introduced an inflation strategy for the increase of salary based on 3 buckets. We keep one big bucket for the merit increase that all the people are eligible, but the way the percentage that we will give to them will be directly linked to their rating on performance. So everyone is eligible for a merit increase, okay? And we have a scale in which we choose related to the performance. And for top performance, we have a dedicated bucket. It's a small bucket, but we want to keep a dedicated bucket to look every year to select in the company the top performers, the people that we are also in the succession plan. So you can see all is linked. We look at the people who are in the success plan. We look also at what we call now the rising star, what can be the next talent for the future. And when we have this list, we look at their performance, and we don't give something to everybody. We give something to the top performers when we see that their salary position regarding the external benchmark are not very well placed. So each time we want to balance with keeping us competitive with them regarding the external benchmark. But in that case, we reward only on the top performance. So you see, it's really a balance with our values and we want to pay for performance. It's important also.
Great. And of course, like you mentioned, balance it out with what the market is doing. So, yeah. Okay, great. I think we have reached the end of the hour. Actually, we have gone 4 minutes over. Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you for the excellent presentation, and also for taking our questions very patiently. For participants, big thank you for staying on this call and taking in as much information. I'm sure you have absorbed a lot of information and knowledge out of this session. There is a certificate, I think, that there is a link pasted in the Zoom chat window where you can collect your certificate of participation. And for closure, I will hand over back to Captain. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Rahul. So I just want to mention that there are many more questions, but because of the paucity of time, I'm sorry, participants, we can't take all those questions. And maybe some other time we can invite Ms. Morand and Standard back for a show, and then we can have more questions. So thank you very much, Standard and Marjorie, for an extremely insightful presentation on HR strategy. It's been a privilege to have you on the Distinguished Speaker Series. The acronym CARE made brilliant sense in terms of expounding your organization's culture and value system. And HR indeed is a change agent, and we're happy to have you here and expound that. On behalf of our founders and management, I would like to invite you to Bengaluru, our city, and the university. So when you are in India, please do come and talk to us. It will be nice to meet you. I would like to thank my brilliant team for. Thank you. I would like to thank my brilliant team for putting this together. Dr. Rahul Dige, Professor Rajan, Arvind, Malati, and Mohammad Imtiaz. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here and spending time with us, and have a pleasant evening. Thank you, Marjorie and Stan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure. Bye-bye.